All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about corn. And the corn is really jumping out of the ground now.
It's blowing and going now. Kind of had a slow start this year. It was so cool and damp conditions early, and we had a little trouble with it early, but it's blowing and going now.
It's doing pretty good.
Really doing good. But so really it's too late to start talking about planting corn.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, you can plant corn now, and you can probably harvest it, sweet corn, but you're going to have a lot more insect problems, and you'll have to really fight the European corn borer and earworms and things a lot more now if you start with it this late. But growing corn is pretty easy to do if you soil test. Check your soil level, make sure your pH is up there where it ought to be. 6.5. With corn, it's not a legume, so it doesn't put nitrogen in the soil. So you're going to need to side dress it. And some of our plot corn is only about this tall, and then within the next couple of weeks we'll be going in there and hitting it with more nitrogen, additional nitrogen. But you fertilize according to soil test before you plant, and then you side dress in a home garden. It's about a pint of ammonium nitrate, or 3400 per 100 foot a row, or something like that. Scout, keep an eye out for insects. The European corn borer and the corn earworm are probably a couple of the worst insects that can create problems.
What kind of damage do they do?
The European corn borer is the first one that you'll get, and they'll get into the plant when it's small, and they'll feed in the whorl of the leaf, the whorl of the plant down in the very center of the plant. And if you can imagine, that new leaf is developing, and it's like a quarter of an inch long, and you've got a little caterpillar that's probably about an eighth of an inch long feeding through that tiny little leaf.
Wow.
And then the corn plant continues to grow, and when the leaf becomes 36 inches long and 4 inches wide, those little bitty holes are that, like, they're like a quarter of an inch in diameter. They really looks like you have a real big critter feeding on your leaves, but it's old damage. And it really doesn't affect the plant. The corn earworm, of course, that's later. That's when you have the ear being formed, and the corn earworm gets in and feeds on the kernels, and so you really try to protect that ear. When it's silking, and from the time of silking until you harvest, almost, you pretty much have to protect that, unless your variety happens to be BT corn. If it's got the Bacillus thuringiensis gene in it, then when that critter, either of those critters, the European corn borer or the earworm, feeds on them, they'll get a big stomach ache and die.
That's really what you want.
Yeah, that's what you. Yeah. And I know there's some BT varieties out there. The most popular varieties, Silver Queen is the white, sweet, really sweet corn, which is really good. And then Peaches and Cream is one that's kind of mixed between white and yellow, and it's really sweet also. It's a good variety. Harvesting sweet corn is important. It's best to harvest it early in the morning, and you realize that the sugars in the sweet corn, as soon as you harvest it, begins to turn to starch. So harvest it early in the morning, and try to get it in a cooler or something to slow down that breakdown of sugar to starch, and harvest only what you need, but harvest it right. If you wait too late, then the kernels will get real hard, and so it's best in a home garden situation if you can kind of stagger your plantings. Plant a row or two, and then wait a couple of weeks, plant another row or two. That way you'll spread out your harvest a little bit. It's a good idea.
What about hills versus rows as far as planting your corn? Does it make a difference?
I don't really think so. I know I've always planted corn in rows, and you don't get corn too thick. It's a big plant. It takes a tremendous amount of nutrients from the soil, and takes a lot of water to produce corn. And so 8 inches apart is close enough for sweet corn. You can even stretch it out a little further than that, but 6 to 8 inches apart is good if you don't have a lot of space in rows. And there's no need to bed it up. But they will work in beds, or it's just not as you need some room to grow corn. Realizing you only get 1 ear, maybe 2 ears off each plant. So if you only have 4 or 5 corn stalks in a raised bed, you're not going to feed a very large family.
Right.
you may have one meal.
Just the one meal.
That's provided.
Maybe.
Yeah,
We
maybe,
love
right?
corn at my
I do.
house.
I love corn.
And also, it's a good idea to plant enough corn for you and the raccoon, because
Aha,
raccoons also
okay.
like sweet corn. And
Okay.
if you only have 4 or 5 plants, and they take 3 of them down, they've taken most of your crop.
Oh,
and if
man.
you've got a row up, 25 feet long, they take 10 feet of it out. You still have some sweet corn.
So you got to share. How about that?
Go share with raccoons.
So what about watering? Because we know corn needs a lot of water.
It needs a lot of water. I would just, any week that you don't get a ½ inch of rain, I guess kind of treat it like you do your yard.
Yeah.
Any week that you don't get a ½ inch of rain, give it a ½ inch. And then as the crop is maturing, you're going to up that a little bit. Drip is a really good way to water corn. If you soaker hoses, if you have it in rows, try to keep the water off the foliage just as you with your ornamentals,
Right,
because
sure.
there are diseases that will attack corn. There's several diseases that will attack them, and you try to keep that foliage as dry as you can.
Okay. How is corn pollinated?
How is corn pollen? The tassel that comes out the top of the plant releases pollen.
Okay.
Pollen will fall down to the silks. Each silk that comes out of the tip of an ear of corn, the pollen will go into that. That silk is a hollow tube, and that pollen will go down that hollow tube. And each kernel of corn has its own silk, and so if pollination occurs, that's how it happens. And it doesn't happen really well when temperatures are in the upper 90s and around 100 degrees, and when it's that hot, it just doesn't occur. I don't know whether the pollen can't get through the silk draws up too small or what, but when temperatures are really, really hot, we have trouble with pollination. And so if you've got your corn in a bed and it's really hot, you may want to put a fan on it during pollination, and try to air condition it or get out there and fan it.
Yeah, cool it down a little bit.
But in the field and during the real hot, dry conditions we had a few years ago, it was not at all unusual to have a cob with no kernels on it, and you don't get much money out of that, when you're trying to sell corn for farmers. So the farmers really get concerned about high temperatures when pollination is occurring. Well, and I haven't seen much corn, silking and tasseling yet, tasseling, but it won't be long. They'll start doing that.
Wow. So each
individual. It usually happens during the hottest part of the year too. So.
But corn likes hot weather. No.
It likes hot weather for growing, but not pollinating. Not really hot. 85 degrees. Is fine for pollination. Typical average summer temperatures is okay for pollination. Okay. But the really, really hot, temperatures like we had, a few weeks ago, and makes it tough.
All right, Mr. D, we definitely appreciate that, and plant extra for the coons.
Plant extra for the raccoons. That's for sure.
For the raccoons. All right. Thank you.